Welcome back to Chemical Safety at Work. I'm Patrick G, and today we have two very special guests joining us on the podcast. Renton Parker, the Director of RiskCon Engineering. He's a dangerous goods consultant with more than a decade of experience in dangerous goods and hazardous chemical management. Renton will share insights on the biggest threats to chemical safety in Australia, real-life lessons from incidents, key improvements to reduce accidents, global trends in dangerous goods safety, adoption of innovative technologies, and updates to standards on mixed classes and segregation. Our other guest is Stormmaster's own product designer Nick Schatz, who joined me in the studio to help me pick Renton's brain. So grab yourself a coffee, throw on your safety goggles, and let's get started. Thanks for joining us, Renton.
Yeah, it's no problem. Happy to be here.
Awesome. So what made you get into this industry?
So I kind of fell in it, really. I studied chemical engineering at university, and through circumstances, I kind of wanted to stay in Sydney and ultimately just applied for an environmental and engineering role, which turned out to be a chemical engineering role in an environment team.
Okay.
And yeah, started working in that industry and enjoyed it, found it super interesting and engaging, and then just ultimately have continued on since.
Yep. So what does that mean, a chemical engineering role in an environment team? What does that look like?
Oh, so it was just it was a large consultancy, and so they break their teams down into environmental, mechanical, mining, that sort of like very industry based.
Yep.
And so I was just a chemical engineering role in a very niche portion of the team, and it was just the environmental team. So that's why I was labelled environmental engineering role.
Yep.
And it did not end up being that at all.
Okay. And so from there, how did you end up to where you are now with RiskCon?
Yeah, so ultimately, I've done the exact same role for 12 years now. Went through a few different companies along the way and realised very early on that because it was quite niche, there was a good opportunity to be able to start a company ourselves, and ultimately ended up teaming up with my mentor to start RiskCon Engineering in 2018 or so.
Yep.
And we've been going 6 years and ultimately try to help our customers, and it seems to keep growing. So we'll keep on doing what we're doing.
Yeah, awesome. And so how much has the company grown since you started it back in 2018?
Yep. So when we started in 2018, it was just myself and my mentor, who was also my business partner.
Yep.
And then since then, we have grown to a team of 11 employees. There are 8 full-time and 3 part-time employees.
And what kind of industries do you mostly focus on?
Pretty much the whole sort of raft of chemical processing industries. So mining, warehousing and logistics, oil and gas, food and beverage, pharmaceuticals, pretty much everything. Wherever there's risk or chemicals being stored, there's some aspect of the skills that we or our services that we provide that can be applied to those industries.
So you've been in the industry for a few years now, obviously. Could you tell us a bit about the behaviours you've seen and attitudes towards safety in the industry?
Yep. So being consultants, we engage with industries or businesses that have some recognition of the risks that they are faced. Sometimes we get involved with on the back of like regulator involvement. And so I guess we see a smaller portion of the total industry because they're people who are aware of the risks. There are a large portion of businesses or individuals that don't fully understand their risks and then are not managing them or not understanding that they need to manage them, and so therefore don't interact with us. And yeah, so I guess we see more like a survivorship bias type interaction of industry.
Yeah. What do you see as the biggest threat to Australian businesses in particular in terms of dangerous goods right now?
Yep, so that leads from the last question, entirely knowledge.
Yep.
So not everyone is taught about dangerous goods, for example, and then how the risks and hazards associated with those can play out in their business. So that results in hazards that are not identified and not managed. You also have the education side of things. So universities, they don't have a big onus or focus on chemicals and chemical management and storage.
So where does that push need to come from in order to get that knowledge to people?
Yeah, so under the regulations for each state, there is a requirement for employers to educate their employees. However, that doesn't necessarily extend to the educators, so our universities. And then even then, universities focus on, I guess, well-rounded education and tend to not get to the very specific components of it. So it's lacking in graduates. When they go out to industry, they are also not aware of what they should be doing when it comes to looking at these sorts of hazards and risks.
Yeah. Do you have any real world examples of some incidents that have happened that you might have been brought in response to, or you've seen awareness come up around after a certain incident's been made a public or something like that? Just an example of a specific incident?
Yep. So a big one that seems to keep cropping up is to do with static.
Yeah.
So where you have flammable gases or liquids, there is potentially an atmosphere that can be ignited. And while we have quite good control around fixed electrical installations, so the equipment that goes in there, it's designed to operate in those potentially hazardous zones. The part that seems to get missed or is misunderstood is around the static. So where you have a charge build up on a surface or clothing or equipment, and then that discharges into that atmosphere and ignites it. And an example of that was a client had a mixing vessel which had been cleaned with a solvent, and it was covered with a plastic covering to contain the flammable gas inside.
Yep.
The procedure was to earth that vessel before doing anything after that, and the particular employee forgot that part of the procedure and then removed the plastic covering, resulting in a discharge of electric or a spark, and that ignited the vapor.
Yep.
Fortunately, he wasn't seriously injured, but just a simple lapse of procedure resulted in a potentially significant incident.
Yeah.
I think you touched on the importance of knowledge and sharing that knowledge within the industry, but are there any other key improvements that we could make as a country to decrease the incidents and accidents that are happening?
There most definitely is. However, I would like to acknowledge that there is a lot of regulators who focus on all these individual components, static, DG storage and handling, that they're already doing an exceptional job to help industry, and they are available for companies and businesses to engage with and actually get the help and assistance they have or they need. Similarly, there are organisations like the Australasian Institute of Dangerous Goods Consultants, which provides a list of consultants and resources where businesses can go to gain this assistance. So ultimately, it's understanding what you don't know and then seeking a knowledge gap, finding a consultant, talking to regulators that will help you improve your safety within your own business and industry.
Yeah, sure. And are you seeing much adoption of new technology or innovation in dangerous goods safety?
Yep. So Storemaster offers various cabinets, and particularly with battery charging. Batteries themselves have become quite ubiquitous. They catch on fire, and storing them appropriately is very beneficial. And so obviously Storemaster offers a good solution there. Around electrical safety, that's very well understood. International standards are constantly being updated and developed to improve how the electrical equipment is being managed and minimizing those electrical hazards that occur around flammable atmospheres. But overall, unless there's a new technology coming out, for example, the new application of batteries or potentially hydrogen that may be developed in the future and becoming more spread out through industry,
Yep.
the old innovations are still very applicable.
Yep.
The hazards are well understood. So it's more so like when there is a new industry, that's when the innovative safety procedures and equipment will come in.
What about in terms of software, I guess, in terms of helping businesses or organisations manage their risk? When we go to work health and safety conferences, we're seeing more and more apps and AI products and things like that. Are you seeing that sort of technology and software becoming more useful in terms of mitigating risk?
Potentially. It's definitely a better way of documenting your risk, but ultimately the first step that one needs to undertake is identifying that risk or hazard. And you don't need significant technology to be able to do that.
Yep.
Once you have that understanding, you can then use these various apps and softwares to then document, track and change.
Yeah, so once the risk has been assessed, then using that software or technology to then track and keep a record of what's being done.
Yeah, exactly. So then you can develop schedules and maintenance schedules and procedures to track and manage your hazard.
Yep.
But yeah, in terms of the initiating points, it's just a good understanding and having good knowledge of the materials you're using or the process that you're adopting, and going through a rigorous hazard identification at the start, and then following that through.
Yeah, perfect.
So in your business, how are you planning for the future in regard to DG and HazChem?
Yep. So we like to be involved in industry, and so we aim to have representatives on standards committees. So that way we're helping develop those standards, and then also having a good understanding of where they are going and how they've been updated, so that we can help our clients and the industries we work in stay up to date.
So can you run us through a bit of how those standards, the development of those standards is informed and generated?
Yep, so there's a standards committee, and then they get a list of the standards that are upcoming to either be updated or reissued. And if they then are selected to be updated, they form a committee of like a working group of consultants, people from industry, people involved in fire protection, essentially just a well-rounded group that has experience with the standard, and then has also experience with industry and how the standards have been applied. And the standard is just, you go through the standard and fix up things that are lacking or are not clear, and then as a group you kind of work through them. Yep. And then they get issued as a draft to allow industry and businesses to comment on.
Yep.
And then you go back through and address each of the comments that are received, and ultimately that results in the completed standard, which is then published and available for everyone to access.
Yeah, great.
So there has recently been an update to around mixed classes and segregation. What should people be aware of?
Yep, so the previous separation table was quite generic in nature. While it provided helpful knowledge in terms of 3 metre separation, 5 metre separation, it didn't acknowledge the nuance of different chemicals. And so the separation table has been updated to provide that nuance, highlighting which classes may generally be able to be stored together or with a little bit of separation, compared to ones that definitely cannot be. And essentially it's directing you to refer to the safety data sheets and obtain that knowledge when there are DG classes that might not interact.
Yep. So there'll be each product, there's a whole spectrum of different levels of risk or compatibility.
Yeah, exactly. And then the safety data sheets normally have that knowledge or that information, and you can review them for incompatibilities between the specific products you're storing, rather than just looking at a generic class of class 3 and class 5 and saying, oh, that can or cannot be stored together. Essentially, yeah, just requiring you to do more work to confirm that what you're doing is safe.
Putting the onus and the due diligence back onto the individual PCBU or
Yeah, exactly.
You were talking before about how there are a lot of resources out there, and there are a lot of groups of people willing to help and willing to share that knowledge, and then it's really up to the individual businesses and business owners to seek out that information. And obviously everyone lives busy lives and business is busy, but what sort of people and what sort of businesses do you find are the ones who are proactive in reaching out, if that makes sense? Sorry. Or is there some sort of common theme? Is there sometimes is it businesses who have experienced a accident and then they reach out that next time, or a close miss, or a...
Yeah, so generally it seems to be industries that are emerging that have had incidents at their sites, and then the regulator tends to do a sort of like an audit of those industries because they've identified that these things keep occurring. So they attend the sites, and then that is when there will be a big influx of people seeking advice from us.
So some of the older industries, the knowledge is kind of well known and well circulated within the industry of the risk. It's kind of
exactly
well understood. Yeah. So what's 2025 got in store for RiskCon?
So we've been doing lots of distillery projects recently and renewable energy. So that just seems to be where our industry has grown, where our expertise is at the moment.
Yep.
But who knows? It seems to change year to year. Every few years there seems to be a new emerging technology. And, so we'll just see where the year takes us.
Yep. Awesome. Well, thanks very much for joining us on the podcast. It's been great to have you. We've had your colleague Jason on in the past, so working our way through the whole company. So no, thanks very much.
Yeah, no, it was great to be here. Thanks for the good questions, and hopefully it's been a good time.